All right. Okay. Confession time. So treat others how you want to be treated. Sounds simple, but putting it into action 24/7, well, that's a master class. So welcome all you wonderful rulers to Living by the Rule, where we're all students in that class together. I'm your host, Nikki Mack, and I'm so excited you're here to join the conversation. Each episode will bring you engaging discussions with guests from diverse faiths and practices, all sharing their wisdom on how we can get better at, well, living by the rule, golden rule. We'll explore how this simple principle fosters profound empathy, fuels self discovery, ignites compassion, strengthens self acceptance, and helps us build incredible communities and find deeper purpose. Please be sure to like. So, if you rulers are like and share and subscribe and all of those good things that I'm never actually really good at saying, so I'm gonna fumble through that part. But if you rulers are ready for some fun, for some real talk and some serious heart opening, then you're in the right place. So today I would like to welcome Elisheva Balas. Elisheva has been teaching Kabbalah with the Kabbalah Center since 1994 and is the host of the weekly Energy Boost podcast. I'm also happy to share that she is my personal Kabbalah teacher, and she has been guiding me on my journey, my spiritual journey, for about 3 years now. And so I'm very excited about this conversation and happy to welcome her. So, welcome, Elisheva.
Thank you for having me.
So let's just dive into the first question that I always get when I tell people that I study Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah?
That's a great question, and I get asked what is Kabbalah all the time too. So I've had time to hone my response. Um, in my experience, what Kabbalah is a system, and it is an ancient system. It dates back thousands of years and is based on the teachings of the Old Testament. Um, Kabbalah is a wisdom that guides us how to shift the way we think, the way we feel, and the way we behave so as to be more aligned with our soul, who we really are, and our source, which is the light of the Creator. And as we learn those principles and shift our thoughts, words, and actions into greater alignment, the result is greater sense of peace, connection, meaning, purpose, as well as really being able to be a creative force in the world, not a passive force, not a reactive force, but a creative, like as in creator force. And as a result, the practice promises a greater sense of fulfillment, because when you are aware that your thoughts, words, and actions make a difference, and you can use your thoughts, words, and actions to make a positive difference, of course, you're going to feel better about yourself. You're going to feel better about your interactions with people, and you're going to see that there is really a divine spark inside of each one of us that's compelling us toward one another to do that work.
Wow. So you've been a teacher since 1994. How did you like you must have started when you were like, was this like the middle school to work program?
Well, not that young, but thank you. My
So what
parents were actually on a
exactly, so
spiritual journey.
how did you get started? What led you to become a Kabbalah teacher?
My parents were on a spiritual journey themselves and found the teachings of Kabbalah and the Kabbalah Center and began participating in classes and events there and dragged me along initially. After some time, um, I saw I saw the value in it for myself. It was a community of young, like-minded people there that I resonated resonated with. And I think by the time I was about 18, I knew that that was what I wanted to do with my life.
Wow, so that must have been pretty transformational for you to come into this wisdom at such a young age. Like, how has like I've only been doing this for about 3 years, and I'm like still like a baby. Like I feel like a baby in a lot of ways in my journey because there is so much to learn. How do you feel like being exposed to that wisdom at such a young age really kind of shaped your life?
Well, I can say it definitely saved my life. I was not on a good trajectory. And my parents were wise enough to let me kind of dig my own ditch before realizing I needed help to get out. And when I needed that help, the wisdom was there for me, the tools were there for me, and they were there without judgment whatsoever. I also don't really know how things would have turned out otherwise, because it did come into my life at such a young age. I I can't imagine where I would be. I mean, every so often, my dad offers me a job working with him, and I have to think, well, now what would that look like? And the answer every time is, why would I do anything else as long as I'm able to do this work? So, I always wanted to be a good person. I wanted to have a family. Um, I was inspired when I was very small by my friends' moms who were charity involved in charities, and I felt like, wow, I would love to be in a place in my life to just be able to help others. But it wasn't until I found the Kabbalah Center that that vision really crystallized in how to help others.
Wow. Well, I tell you, I have with the amount of time that I have been exposed to the center, and as I said, fairly recently, I know that it has changed the way that I look at so many aspects of my life. But I think parenting, most of all, right? And I was just wondering, so you know what is kind of the primary drivers behind the way that, because it is a very distinct, I think, way to go about parenting kids. Like everybody's always so super nice when I go to the center and I watch the dads and the moms and interacting with the kids. So can you just talk a little bit about kind of what that philosophy is and how that really ties back to the wisdom and the eventual goal of developing people, right, who are dedicated to living by the golden rule?
For sure. And that the question you asked, Nicole, makes us step back a little bit and ask, why are people even born? What brings one soul or another to each lifetime? Or why does humanity exist at all? And you have to kind of assume, if you believe in a higher power and if you believe in the infinite nature, the eternality of the soul, that every time I've chosen to come to the world, there's been a reason. There's we have these cliches and things that we say, like, your birthday is the day that God decided the world couldn't go on another moment without you, right? But what does that really mean? That there's so much to that. And Kabbalah teaches, and I think I'm going to assume that most of the people who are listening to us have this discussion are adults, right? How many of the decisions that we make as adults are informed by our parents, whoever raised us, our upbringing? And you can say, well, I don't really think about, how my decisions today are going to affect my parents very much, or how they made me make that decision or otherwise. But Kabbalah teaches, in that same kind of line of thinking, we don't belong to our parents, our kids don't belong to us. And even though it can very much seem that way at times, and a lot of the decisions that we might make as parents are driven by the fact that we feel our children are a reflection or an extension of us. Kabbalah teaches that, our souls choose our parents, and we choose our parents not because they're going to give us the easiest ride or the comfiest conditions, but our soul knows what we've come to do, and it chooses the parents who are going to install the right software, or as I like to say, install the right buttons, so that when we get older, they get pushed and we have the opportunity to rise above. And our childhood really is what implements that conscious awareness of what bothers us, what we like, what we don't like, what's important to us, what we could care less about. And so, in that sense, our parents are, or our caregivers are, an integral part of our upbringing, but they're not the cause. The cause is the soul coming down to work on X, Y, and Z. So, our parents might install X, Y, and Z issues for us to work on then later as adults. So when we talk about parenting and Kabbalah, it's very much about how can I instill within the children that I've been entrusted with the maximum amount of awareness. And by the way, children are very much very much seek instant gratification. So a lot of it is teaching them how to have that longer range vision, to be able to delay instant gratification for the sake of being happier later, getting a greater reward later, thinking about the greater good or other people, and really giving them the tools to develop that ability to pause and to say, well, wait a second, how are my thoughts, how are my words, how are my actions going to affect other people? And can I choose a different response than my knee-jerk response in this situation to create a better outcome? So a lot of parenting is really just managing a team, if you're lucky enough to have a team, or managing an employee, if you will, and you want to give them the most skills and the greatest advantages that you can give them, so that when they get out in the world, they're a part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Yeah, I think the concept of your soul picking your parents, like that was probably the most mind-blowing mind-blowing concept to wrap my head around when I first started studying. And I think the biggest part of that, and probably what I imagine a lot of people struggle with, is that that means that you really do have to accept like accountability, like you are really, really accountable for your life and how things kind of play out. Do you find that with a lot of your students that they really kind of struggle with that piece? Like I would think in modern day times that would be a pretty tough one to wrap your head around. There's a lot of people that are kind of, blaming or saying that they're experiencing some sort of unfair treatment because of XYZ situation. And the old joke in therapy when you go to your therapist is like, yeah, it's your mom's fault.
Right. Well, my teacher, Karen Berg, used to always say there are no victims, only volunteers. And what that really means is that as human beings, we have one thing that the rest of God's creations do not, and that is free will.
Mm.
So, you think about, you may have a dog at home, and that dog is just such a love ball and so sweet. And maybe they do dumb things every once in a while, but they're just inherently so good, right? When you walk in that front door, they don't say, Nicole's been a little cold lately. Maybe I'm not gonna jump on her and lick her face. No, they're just their instinct, they're just driven by that love and warmth. Human beings, we have a choice. We get to decide, am I going to be driven by me, my selfishness, my ego, my self-preservation instincts, my desire to be right, or to be powerful, to feel good about myself? Or am I going to, again, that word pause is going to come up a lot in this conversation. Can I pause and say, well, wait a second, what's really going on here? And that whole, why would I choose my parents? I had a colleague years ago who was very bothered by that principle. Why would I choose my parents who were so whatever they were to me when I could have parents who were just unconditionally loved? Why would I choose that? So it's important to remember that the soul isn't interested in comfort and convenience. It's concerned with growth and progress. And so when a soul chooses, let's say, a family where a parent leaves, right? A parent walks out on the home. Why would a soul choose that? Well, I can't pretend to be the upstairs office. There's probably infinite reasons why a soul might choose that situation, but perhaps it's to learn unconditional love. That people do make
Mm,
mistakes, and people do, that's why pencils have erasers, right? Because there are going to be mistakes, and there are going to be, um I don't want to say failures, because I don't think anything is a failure unless we decide it is. But we're gonna misstep a little, and there are going to be some shortcomings, and we can we can exhibit the same level of compassion and understanding we would want for ourselves, even to the people that hurt us. Not that that excuses their behavior or gives them a pass to treat us the way they want to treat us, but to at least understand that hurt people. And then from that place, getting to decide, and here's the question you asked before, I get to decide how it affects me. I had this
mm,
kind of childhood, and I get to decide. Does it define me? Does it limit me? Does it make me angry? Or does it make me want to stand up for other people who've been in my position? Does it make me look at people in a different way because I've been through hard things and I know everyone's going through something? I get to decide. And to me, that was the big epiphany for me as a young person is, you mean I get to choose how things affect me? I thought I didn't have a choice. I thought if bad things are bad, they're bad, and I'm going to suffer. And the revelation that I get to choose, I can be hurt and still be happy. I can be offended and still be cheerful. I get to decide. And that was so empowering for me, for someone to tell me, you get to choose. And from then it was just, kind of like a domino effect for me, because it just made so much sense. And I felt so much stronger as a result of what I was learning, that it really inspired me to be a part of sharing this wisdom with more people and empowering more people to choose.
So a big part of the teachings and really what kind of attracted me, I think, initially to Kabbalah was the concentration on the golden rule, which can be said: treat others how you want to be treated, love thy neighbor as thyself, don't do to other people what you wouldn't want to have done to you. Like, what exactly does Kabbalah teach about the golden rule? Like, what are the thoughts on that from a Kabbalistic perspective?
It's a great question. And I think in the same way that you were able to say the same thing multiple times, there are multiple ways to understand and to extract wisdom and inspiration from what we call the golden rule. I think one thing, one angle that is unique to Kabbalah is that each human being, at least according to what we understand, and reminding everyone again, Kabbalah is a biblically based wisdom. So the sources for all these teachings are really the Old Testament. Um, that when the world was created, God really created us in his image, not meaning God has two eyes, a nose, two ears, and a mouth, but that we are divine beings, that we are a spark. Every single person on the planet has a spark of the light of the creator within him or her. And what that means is that not only do we all have the same source, which I'm sure many religions would subscribe to, many philosophers as well, but that we all have a piece, if you can imagine almost like a vase that shatters into 8 billion pieces. We're not only connected to the same source, but we are one.
Mm.
And that do unto others as you would have done to you, or do not do to others what is hated or hateful to you. What that really means, and I used to teach this to kids, so I can take it into so many different visuals and illustrations. But what it really means is that when I call you a jerk, I'm not only calling myself a jerk, I'm calling God a jerk. And yes,
Mm.
that sends giggles throughout the third grade classroom, right? When I spill something on your homework, I'm spilling something on God's homework or my own homework. But it really does expand your perspective on what's happening here in the world. That we are
Right.
really one of the most beautiful teachings about this, I think, is that our goal, our purpose is to put that vase back together, that we are
Mm.
meant to unite as one again. And we do that in friendships. We do that in partnership. We do that in marriage. Every marriage is bringing together two more pieces of the puzzle, and really seeing like how I can be a uniting force versus a dividing force. And you and I have had conversations about how sometimes in a quest to unite a specific group, a group of people that have one thing in common, quite often you end up alienating everybody else, right?
Right.
The golden rule is really meant to unite that one thing that we all have in common, regardless of where we were born, how much money we have, how old we are, what we look like. We all have that spark in inside of us. And when it says, love your neighbor as yourself, a lot of people get tripped up on that because they don't love themselves, or how can the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I make myself a cup of coffee. I could never make someone a cup of coffee before I make my own cup of coffee. Right? So does that mean that I'm not loving my fellow person, my fellow man like myself? It's really the goal, the ultimate goal that the Kabbalists teach, is that we will get to that level of unity, that I will know. And even though we're, I don't know how many thousands of miles apart, I will feel when you need a cup of coffee, and I will bring it to you even before you can say, you know what I need right now? I need a cup of coffee. That we will be so in tune, and we will take advantage of that connection, not for the self, but really for the sake of taking care of one another. And just to think that that's possible, or that I can even achieve that in my home, or in my family, or in my community, it's a really beautiful thought.
Yeah, I like to think I'm energetically sending you your coffee to the West Coast.
Thank you. It's about that time.
It's about that time. So, so treating others like living by the golden rule. And, as you said, this wisdom has been around for thousands of years with kind of this goal in mind. And, I was inspired because I did see a kind of an infographic ones that had like how the golden rule is taught in all the different religions. And it's like, okay, we've been at this for like thousands of years and we still haven't quite got it yet.
What's funny is I saw, I think it was a clip on maybe Instagram, where a comedian was saying, imagine an alien comes down to planet Earth and says, um, what religion are you? "Oh, we're Christians." "Well, what do you believe in?" "Be kind to everyone."
Right.
"Who said that?" "Well, Jesus, how many thousands of years ago?" And the alien goes, "And no one said it since?" And then the,
Right.
the the person thinks and says, "Well, you know what? Dr. Martin Luther King said it also." And he's like, "And nobody else?"
Right. It's like, what are we missing here? Like
Yeah.
it is literally in It's everywhere. Like
It's the
that
foundation of
simple
everything.
lesson is everywhere. And so anyways, we're not there yet. We're on our way. I like you believe that we are definitely on our way um to that to that place. And I hope that I'll be here when that happens. And if not, I want to lay my legacy of breadcrumbs. But if what is like the first step that someone can take to get on the path, right, to incorporating the golden rule? Because it really does kind of go against basic human nature. Like our base nature is no, I got to take care of mine, and you
Right.
can't have mine because or if you've got yours and I'm not getting some piece of mine. So like, how does someone get started um walking on this path? Because it's definitely a process.
For sure, for sure. And as a parent to younger kids, this is something that I think about all the time because it's not natural. The body is definitely wired to protect and defend, right? That's sort of like the one of the nature's knee-jerk responses that we have biologically. But at the same time, we know that hatred is learned. It's not innate. Our nature is to both love and care and at the same time protect. So, again, in teaching this to very young people, we usually come up with a list of all the things that bother us that other people do. It's really simple. I don't
That
like it
could be
when
a
people
really
talk.
long list for some
Well,
people.
when you're in third grade, it's not that long. Okay, let's
That's
start them
true. That's
early.
true.
Let's start them early. So it's when my brother takes my toy. So what do we understand from that? I don't like stealing, grabbing. I like it when people ask permission. I like when people respect my stuff, right? From every little what I don't like, you get to learn much more about what you do like, how you
Mm.
do want to be treated. So I do think it starts off with identifying all of those things that we know are that we ourselves detest, that we think, "Oh, I would never do that." But if we're honest with ourselves, we often do a version of that in a way that we think is justifiable. And I'll give you an example. I taught this concept in a seminar, I don't know how many years ago, about how often, and this again is a kind of universal one, that many times what we recognize in others, what bothers us in others, is actually a mirror on us, for us to see where it within us do we have that behavior or that thought. So a man came up to me after the seminar and said, "I love what you said, but I have to say, the person that I was thinking about, I am nothing like them." So I said, "Can you please tell me about this person?" So he said, "Well, it's my soon to be ex wife." You know where this is going. And she is the
Right.
most bitter, hateful, poison. Like, he had all compelling, the whole
Adjective.
compelling case against her. And by
Right.
the way, I'm sure he was probably right. So I said to him, I don't remember his name, let's say Seymour. I said, "Seymour, I don't know you and I mean no disrespect to you, but is it possible that the way your wife feels about all of humanity is how you feel about her?"
Oof.
And it looked like I punched him in the stomach. Because, and I love that example because she deserves hatred. She is a nasty human, right? I don't really mean that, right? But
Right.
in Seymour's
In his
mind,
mind,
if
yes.
hate is totally justified on someone who is so hateful. So when we start to understand how we are creating, we're a part of the problem that we've identified, and we start reining those behaviors in. I don't want people to talk about me. I have to stop talking about people. Very
Right.
simple. And you could say, well, that's not going to stop them. Oh, you watch. You will
Mm.
stop giving people what to say. Right? It's such the universe is such a blessed and a merciful system. And so you see that what we all believe that what you give is what you get. So if we start giving more of what we want and less of what we don't, guess what we're going to receive? more of what we want and less of what we don't, which is where we started this conversation.
Right. Wow. Amazing. So two more questions. So how important is it for people to incorporate spiritual work and practice into self-discovery and defining purpose? Like everybody right now is running around, everybody's being spiritual, everybody is trying to find their purpose. Like how important are those two things tied together?
So I believe very strongly, and not only in my own personal belief in the teachings of Kabbalah, and also in what I've seen in others' practices over all these years, is that the word spiritual is actually two words. And you'll see how this is going to play out in a second. It is the word spirit and ritual. Spirituality is meant to be a practice. It's not a hobby. It is, if you understand it, the reason that we're here. God didn't look at us and say, you know what, Nicole, in about 50 years, there's a company who's going to really need your expertise. So you're going to be born on such and such date. And you're going to go to X, Y, and Z schools so that you can be ready to consult that company and help them with their financial woes. That's not why God put you on the planet, right?
Right.
Your soul needed to be here to reveal its light. And therefore, in order for that to become your priority, there does need to be a practice. What that practice looks like is going to be different for every individual. Some are called to do, to participate in more communal practices. Some are called to walk in nature. Some are called to combine everything, all of the, everything, all of the above. What I think is important is that the process is joyful, it's curious. What worked for your parents might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for your kids. But what is important, and this goes back to the parenting, I think it's from the book is called, I hope I'm going to get it right because I didn't prepare to talk about this in advance, but I think it's called The Anxious Generation. And in there, the author cites a study that shows how religious households, regardless of religion, I'm sorry, not religious, conservative households, regardless of whether the household is conservative politically or conservative religiously, kids growing up in those households have a 70% less incident of anxiety, depression, and suicide attempts.
Wow.
This is not my book. This is a book I
Right.
read. But what the author proposes is that in those homes where there is a practice, there is on Sundays, this is what we do. On Friday nights, this is what we do. Life stops for these practices. Kids are much more, even if they decide when they're older, and this is part of the study, that they don't believe that that's not their religion, the mental health benefit is still there. And I think that it speaks to the value of practice. That by
Wow.
you having a practice and imparting the importance of setting time aside in your everyday, if it's every day or every week, to connect to something, source, nature, higher power, whatever it is, even if they decide it's not for them later on in life, it sets them up to be happier and healthier.
Wow. That's
So I read the book is a bit scary. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a harsh criticism of where we're at today with youth, but it's also scarily accurate. And I believe that there is a lot to be said about the value of imparting beliefs and practices to younger people earlier on so that they can have space in their own lives for some sort of practice and some sort of belief.
yeah. Wow. That's deep. Okay, that's one we'll have to explore more in. In another future session between you and I,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I know that yeah, I yeah. Anyways, we'll talk about that more. I have to bring you back on. We'll talk about that a little bit. That's a pretty deep one. So if someone is interested in learning more about Kabbalah and the work you do with the Kabbalah Center, your podcast, how do they get in touch for more information?
Okay, so if you're on social media, or let's say if you're on the information superhighway, if you're on the internet, Kabbalah.com is a great place to start to just poke around and see what's interesting there. We have a fabulous course, entry level course that you can pay what you're able to participate. So if you're sold, maybe it's not the first time you're hearing about these teachings, go for it. I think it's no risk and huge reward. If you want to catch the podcast, as you said, it's called Weekly Energy Boost. We're on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. I am personally also on Instagram, although I definitely don't share that much on my personal Instagram. It's just my first name and last name, Elisheva Balas. And the podcast is also on Instagram at Weekly Energy Boost. Does that answer your question? I can't remember if there was
think
something else you
so.
asked. I think so.
Clearly, you're much better at that piece of the podcast game than I am.
It's all about hours spent. It has nothing to do with expertise. You say it enough times, it just comes right out.
Goals, man, goals. I'm laying
We're
down goals.
almost 400 episodes in. I think I had enough time saying it. So.
Oh my gosh. Wow. And it is such a rich resource. So I highly recommend it. And I think the beauty of it is that the information that's shared, even though it's kind of tied to the week's energy, and we can get into that on a whole nother day. But it is like you say, it's practical wisdom that you can apply to your life every day, every minute, every hour, really. And so, yeah, I definitely highly recommend that. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me and to share this information with all the rulers out there. That's what we call ourselves. We're rulers. We're ruling our lives. So I just want to say that brings us to a close of another episode of Living by the Rule. As we've heard today, truly living this principle is an ongoing practice, a conscious choice that you must make every day. It's about learning, growing, and sometimes often stumbling, but always striving. And that's what makes you all rulers. So it's your commitment to this path. And remember, the power to choose how you respond, how you connect, and how you treat others starts within you. And as you go forward, carry this with you, rulers. I rule me. Like, say it and give yourself a hug. Ugh. I rule me. And I choose my actions. I choose empathy. I choose to keep learning how to live by the rule. And until next time, keep practicing and be kind to yourselves and to others. Thank you.